Somebody, these are like 8 hours ago, so we could like just keep up with them or whatever.
I have one too, so that is...
Are you not eating this?
No, I feel like...
Oh, I'm gonna eat it.
What is freaking up? My name is Eve.
My name is Sarah, and I'm about to eat a hot dog.
And welcome to Spooky Spotlights. Also known as Burnt Out Perfectionist for October. I thought I was on Reddit, as I do every once in a while now, like a good spooky story.
I love Reddit.
I saw this one, and like, I work in healthcare. Sarah has a child.
Mm-hmm.
This is my reasoning behind it.
Oh God.
We did already record an episode, so we're not going to do Survive and Thrive.
Yeah.
Because, obviously. But this is all about intuition. So it doesn't have a name or anything. It's just intuition.
Huh.
So this is from Genre Denomont. This isn't scary, but it still haunts me more than anything. I had a young mother come into labor and delivery for a scheduled cesarean for triplets at 33 weeks. I was doing her heart and all of her usual, vitals in ultrasound for fetal position. She was super squirrely and nervous, so I asked her if there's anything I could help allay her concerns. She told me they warned her of all of these terrible things that could happen with having multiple pregnancy and none had.
Oh my God. People are so mean when you're pregnant.
Heck, she'd been mall walking yesterday, and the babies were projected to be over 4 pounds, hence the C-section.
Mm-hmm.
Then she said, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I tried to reassure her that everything looked great. Her cesarean did go well, and all 3 babies were big.
Okay.
I rounded on her the next morning and went off service. I even told her that she shouldn't have to worry about anything. She died the next day from acute cardiac decomposition in a helicopter on the way to another hospital, trying to get a heart transplant. She apparently had been developing dilated cardiomyopathy, and the uterus was pressing on her SVC was keeping her alive. The delivery killed her. She knew. Somehow, she just knew. That bothers me more than any ghost.
That's super true. So there's a lot of people who will figure stuff out ahead of time or know that something's wrong. And there's a lot of doubt that goes into being a mom or being a parent. Some people will be like, oh, you're being hysterical, which I'm not shitting on the medical system. I never will. But there's some folks who, it's either the way that you're saying it or the way that it's taken. It'll be a little off, and you'll be like, no, I'm pretty sure I know what this is. And then you're looking at them and they're like, oh no, it's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I know what this is. And then it turns around and you want to be right, but that's super unfortunate. She just knew.
She was just like, yeah, just casually died. I read it and I was like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, I would have been like, pardon? I said, pardon?
So that was the mini one that I saw, and I was like, oh. The other one was, my grandma used to tell me scary stories when I was little, and this one I'll never forget. This is an actual scary story.
Okay.
I was 10 years old when my grandma came to live with us. It was 6 months after my grandpa passed away, and I guess, looking back, she must have been lonely in the big house of theirs, rattling around with the only grief and memories for company. So despite a few protests from my mom, my parents took her in. There was no protest for me, not at all. Grandma was loud and fun and I loved her. She had almost limitless supply of boiled sweets, and she always slipped me a couple whenever she saw me. She was always the first to look out for me when I got in trouble too. But it was her stories I loved the best. Grandma had all kinds of stories. Stories about growing up during World War II, stories about things she'd get up to with her friends on the South Coast after her family had been evacuated, sad stories, funny stories, adventure stories. But it was her scary stories that were my favorite. She had a lot. Most of the stories I'd laugh off or forget, but long after she was done telling them. But there was a couple that really spooked me. I was 10 at the time, you have to understand, and Grandma certainly knew how to bring the stories to life. Which I would wish to have a grandma like this.
Oh, yeah.
She'd shut off the lights in my room, so the only glow of the night sky shone through the curtains, and she'd shuffle in real close. Close enough so I could see the wrinkles on her face and smell the boiled sweets on her breath. Close enough so deep her blue eyes would stare straight into mine. She must have given me nightmares with a few of those, but now, years later, there's only one that I can still remember. only one that stuck with me. The story about the shower and Mr. Longfingers.
Oh, no.
Grandma told me about Mr. Longfingers one night after I asked about her bath.
My millennial ass is like, salad fingers right away in my head, though. But sorry.
Grandma used to love her baths. She'd spend ages in them, like candles and incense, lie back humming to herself until the water turned cold. Drove my mom crazy, but when I asked her why she loved them so much, she said it was the only place she could relax. The only place that was safe for her to relax. You know, like me, who are, well, more sensitive to certain things, we have to have baths, she told me seriously one night, shuffling closer to the bed. I couldn't possibly spend that long in the shower. It'd be far too risky. Grandma stared at me with her blue eyes, unsmiling, and I knew it was time for one of her stories. I shivered with pleasure and pulled the covers up to my chin. Why is it so risky, Grandma? She half turned to look at the window, watching me from the corner of my eye, pausing for effect. I waited for my heart rate to pick up so slightly in my chest. Well, she said after a moment, it's only risky if you close your eyes, of course. If you close your eyes for longer than 10 seconds.
Oh.
What do you mean? Why? Well, do you ever play the game in the playground with your friends? The one where the one turns and the others sneak up on them when they're not looking? I nodded, and Grandma nodded back. Exactly. So that's what it's like in the shower. When you have your eyes closed, that's what it's like with Mr. Longfingers. I don't like people. I'm in
the shower. I'm always scared in the shower in general. Like or sometimes there's just like a family member standing outside, and I'm like, "Hello," and they're like, "Oh, I'm like it's the back of like Ben because we only have one bathroom," or like my kid sneaks in because she's trying to like not interrupt my shower, and she's like going pee, and I'm like, also I'll like go to get shampoo, and the curtain moves. I'm like, ah!
A cold itch tickled back. Who's Mr. Longfingers, Grandma? She let out a deep breath, as if she wished she hadn't said anything, turned her head back to face mine. When she said spoke, she lowered her voice. No one exactly knows, Grandma whispered. Some think it's a creature that's attracted to the heat and the smell we give off. Others think it's a demon that finds its way into our realm through the dense steam of clouds. No one can say for sure, because the only ones who have actually seen Mr. Longfingers aren't even able to tell you. Hold it in breath. Why not? Grandma shuffled closer to the bed and leaned towards me, leaving my question hanging in the air. Don't you worry, sweetheart. Don't worry your pretty head. As long as you remember the rules, you'll be fine. What rules? Well, when you're in the shower, you try not to close your eyes for too long. 5 seconds is fine, and 10 is just okay too, but longer than that. Yeah, then what? Well, any longer than that, and you might just start to feel something in the room with you, something watching. And if you ever go longer than 15 seconds, then you might start to hear a noise too. Hear what? A soft tap, tap, tap of fingers on the glass. Fingers drumming against the glass door of your shower. If you do ever hear that noise, God forbid, will you make me a promise? Look, Grandma, promise me you'll never open your eyes. Barely slept that night, hardly at all. I'd close my eyes and try to relax, but every time I did, I'd imagine a face pressed against the bedroom window, staring at me. When I did finally get to sleep, I had nightmares, bad ones. I had all of them all week. In fact, dreams about disembodied eyes watching me in the dark. The shower was the worst. That's when Grandma's story really got to me. Never thought about it before, but suddenly I had trouble shutting my eyes in there. I'd be standing beneath the beating water, shampoo running down my face. As soon as I squinted my eyelids closed, I'd hear Grandma's words running through my head. 5 seconds is fine, and 10 seconds is just okay. But any longer than that, I'd rub my hair real fast, feeling the shampoo dripping down my chin. I'd counted 5 seconds, I'd feel it, a sort of pressure, not feeling of watching exactly. I'd run my fingers faster and faster through my hair, frantically trying to get the suds out, and the readiness black behind my closed eyes, coupled with a rush of water in my ears, could feel the held breath. The seconds would race through my mind, and I'd be so desperate to open my eyes that I'd sometimes do it before my hair was rinsed fully clean and my eyes would sting with shampoo. But before I'd shampoo them again, I'd always start to peer through the steep glass to see if there was anybody there. It wasn't long before my mom realized something was up. She heard me crying out in my sleep one night and came in to comfort me, asked me what the matter was, and it all came out. I told about Grandma's story and about Mr. Longfingers. She got this look on her face when I was telling her, like she used to when I would make her really mad. This wide-eyed, angry look. Only this time, she wasn't angry with me. She was angry with Grandma. The parents' room was next to mine. Sometimes I'd press an ear against the wall and I'd hear soft whispers. That night, though, after my mom was satisfied, I wasn't scared anymore. She'd gone back to her room. The whispers were not soft at all. Oh no. I heard my mom hissing to Dad about Grandma, and the story that she told me. Mom's voice floated through the wall, sharp and crisp. You know what your fucking mother said to him? Now? Don't you, Simon? Dad's response was unintelligible mutter. She's told him there's a monster that'll get him if he shuts his eyes in the shower. A monster! The poor kid's been having nightmares all week. Seriously, Simon, you better say something to her tomorrow morning, first thing or I will. Grandma came to visit me in the room the following night. That time, as she perched at the end of my bed, there was no stories, nothing like that. Grandma just sat there, stared. The light of the moon outside my window lit up her wrinkled face. You'd know I'd never let anything bad happen to you, don't you? She said after that moment. I nodded. I know, Grandma. You know I wouldn't let you come to any harm? I nodded again. Okay, good, that's good. She looked away from me for a moment out the window. You know, the things I tell you in the evening are meant to help you, sweetheart. They're meant to toughen you up a bit, protect you. But maybe your mom's right. Maybe I did go too far. She looked down and smiled, and even then, even though I was only 10 years old, I could tell it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll tell you what, Grandma said. You know that what I told you of Mr. Longfingers in the shower? Well, I'm going to make sure you're safe. I'll scare the bastard off. How about that? It won't come back in a hurry. I stared at Grandma. I nodded my head once. That night she went to bed, and I was the one who found her. I don't exactly know what happened, but I guess it was a week after they had talked to my room, a week after she told me that she wouldn't come to any harm. I woke up early that morning from a bad dream to a heavy thumping sound. I sat bolt upright in my room. I looked over, and there she was. Her body lay dead. Grandma's grandma was like,
Oh my God.
I just thought that was like, Mr. Longfingers.
Oh yeah, it's like, don't worry, I'm here to help. Yeah. So came across an incredibly creepy family a while back. So this is a story that was submitted under True Scary Stories for Reddit. Okay. I love when people start like this. Okay, I never really post anything on Reddit, mostly just reading, so please excuse me if I do or say something that isn't common courtesy here. In around 2018-2019, I, 25 female at the time, was 18 or 19 years old, was living in Nebraska. When I grew up, I lived in the largest city in NE, but it wasn't essentially surrounded by corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, so rich folks started building huge houses and giant properties on the edge of town as things proceeded to grow. All of that being said, I had a good friend whose parents' house was one of those big ones right on the blurring line between the fields and the city. My friends and I were constantly hanging out at his place because it was fun. They had tons of property, 4x4s to ride on, a hot tub, a huge living room for us to watch, sports, have reality TV show to binge, sessions. Plus, his parents were super cool, and we could drink out there as long as we stayed at the house. It was tons of fun, even though I am quite scared of the dark. So I would just not go outside after a certain time because there was a little lightning and the nearest neighbor was about a mile away. I always felt weird energy driving to and from his place. And it was late at night, but never had anything happen until one night. The drive out there was long, winding, two-way road that had thick trees on both sides, and you pass one of the city's largest cemeteries on the way. Barely any lighting, of course, beside the street lamps every once in a while, and very little traffic. It all inherently bit creepy. And all it meant to having sped through the sections of the road many times to get through it as quickly as possible. This specific night was a perfect spring weather, so I was driving with my windows down listening to music, and it was around 10 p.m. I was coming around the corner of one of the curves in the road when I had essentially slammed on my brakes. Right in front of me in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards away, was what looked like a family. Again, picture a completely pitch black road with thick forest on both sides and only my headlights to show what's in front of me. This family was of like 3 or 4, a tall, slim woman, an average height man, a child, short hair, but couldn't tell the gender based on the clothing. I couldn't see their face. Maybe around 8 years old. And the mother was pushing a fucking stroller. That's what made it, like, literally a fucking stroller, the way they wrote it. Their clothes looked normal, not tethered, but, you know, like, not nice, not clean. They also were not carrying any kind of light source, meaning before I arrived behind them in the car, they'd been walking in the pitch black. They were all facing away from me, walking completely silent in the middle of the street in the same direction I was heading. And I had turned my music down to hear if they were speaking, had music playing or something. They didn't. The hairs on my arms immediately stood up. I came to a stop in the road behind them, obviously, and just sat there for a moment to let them move. They seemed to be completely unaffected by me and didn't even turn their heads slightly, nor did they attempt to move out of the way. I literally thought I was going insane or that I was dreaming. It was so surreal. Before I really had time to fully process and register what I was seeing and how truly strange it was, they all at the same time stopped walking and very slowly turned and faced my car. I immediately threw my car in reverse and sent it backwards for probably a full 20 seconds before flipping a U-turn and nearly running myself off the road and booking it in the other direction. The only thing I remember noticing is in the stroller, it looked completely empty. This was the part that sticks in my head in my mind the most. I have never felt terror like that in my life. I checked my rear view mirror and probably 1,000 times before getting on the main road and never saw a glimpse of them. In fact, I never saw a glimpse of them ever again. I tried asking my friend and his family about it, only to essentially feel like I was insane because of the way that they looked at me. Every time I tell this story, I get one of 3 reactions. They immediately think I'm a fucking cockadoo, think I'm lying, or have had something very similar happen to them. I really don't care if no one believes me, honestly. It was, and still is, the creepiest fucking thing that has ever happened to me. I think about it all the time. It was either some weird-ass family trying to scare the shit out of someone, a distraction for an attempted robbery or assault, or it was something more maybe sinister or not normal. I'm going to tell myself probably for the rest of my life that it was the first option. The way that this person wrote this sounds like when I read it, I was like, this sounds like me. And it's just like those brief moments of like, what the fuck just happened? Yeah, I mean, I think because I could relate it back to something that happened to me. So you have those friends, you go out, you're driving around in their car, you have music playing, you've done the ridiculous thing where you've gone and gotten French fries in McDonald's and then maybe Dairy Queen. And you're just driving around having fun. It's like warm outside. You're driving down like random roads in your area and stuff like that. And we went all the way up and we were looking at all these like developments that were happening, which you were still allowed to drive in those areas. And we're like, oh, look at all the stuff. And we're like, oh, let's just keep going. And there's this like little forest that's at the top behind this development. And we're like, might as well go up there. We go up there and we're driving up this road and we're like, maybe we should turn around. Like, it doesn't look like there's anything up here. And where we live, there's like a lot of like wilderness and stuff. And like, might be a campsite up here. Might be some animals that we don't need to run into. And all I remember is we see something and we're like, oh, we'll just turn around up there because the road was kind of smaller. And there's these giant gates. And we're like, oh, I wonder what's in there. And we look through the gates and all these people who are walking around on this property in white, like nightgowns or like cloaks. Every single one of these people walking around. And there's like a building up there and we're like, what the fuck? And then a couple of people like looked over. This is at night, by the way. And I look at my friend and she looks at me and I'm like, are we fucking losing it? And she goes, what the fuck is this? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, my body doesn't feel right. We're definitely turning around. Like, she was the one driving. So we turned around and went back and left. And I still, to this day, have not figured out what the fuck it was.
It's like a cult.
I thought it was a cult. I'm like, oh my God. Are we near that, like, one of those, like, cults that is, like, oddly, widely accepted in fucking society and still exists? Or what was that? And it was funny because now it's developed. And we actually have friends who live in that area. And my husband's like, oh, we'll just drive up here or whatever. It seems I'm like, no. He's like, what am I? We do not go down that road. And he goes, whoa, what is the matter with you? And I was like, and I told him, and he looks at me and he goes, oh, yeah, no. Because my husband is like, I'll totally watch a scary movie with you at 1 p.m. on a Saturday if our kids over at a friend's house. I'm like, no, I want to watch this specific one at night because it's spooky. And he's like, I don't want to. Why? Because I'm scared.
He is the biggest, like, he's like, I love spooky season, but he's the biggest puss.
Well, I just look at him and I was like, you don't need to be a spooky season person. It's totally fine if you just don't like that stuff. And it's like he's like the king of Christmas.
True.
Yeah. So I'm like, you're fine.
I feel like people walking in the middle of the road in the daytime is fine, but it's like you add night, you're like, why are you not lit?
You add synchronized turning around and looking at one person, that is a fuck no. That is a fuck no right there.
Also, like, how long did you stare at them for? Why didn't they notice the car behind them?
Why didn't they have lights? What was in the stroller?
A dead baby.
I don't know. Was it spirits? I don't know. Who knows?
Also, what those spirits and the poor mom still drinks around a stroller?
Oh, yeah, I know, right? Do you want me to read one more? I said, pardon? Is how I read that. My family has a campsite we would go to every year on Memorial Weekend that's deep in the Appalachian Reservation. It's always an amazing experience with no trip being the same due to interesting phenomenons. Campsite requires special permission and permits due to its being a religious grounds for ceremonies. Paint a picture. The campsite is small. It's in a valley surrounded by 4 different mountains, a white stone plateau, a crumbling rock slide, nightmare, a black stone plateau with lots of small caves, and a tiny, super fun mountain that we always take the kids and first-time climbers up. Within the mountains, it creates a funnel for the animals to make a fun wildlife viewing experience. Come on, Sarah, get your life together. The campsite itself is right next to the creek. Now, to the topic. We had many different unexplainable events happen. Examples: every night we go to sleep to drums and chants being sung all night. Orbs in every picture. Animals following you around and the trails like certain birds. The feeling of always being watched but never in a I'm going to be harmed kind of way. And disembodied voices every time anyone hikes alone down near the creek. And the absolute craziest thing that has happened there was late night, my nephew and I were the last to hit the rack. We were sitting at the campfire waiting for it to go down a little more, like, before you go to sleep, like watching the fire pins, like that. Next thing we know, what I can only describe as a darkness rolled into the campsite. The darkness was so thick that we couldn't see the trees or the creek anymore. The weird part is everything went dead silent. We could no longer hear the crickets or even the flow of the creek anymore. I pointed this out to my nephew, and he was in a pure panic. It stayed like that for maybe 5 minutes and then dissipated and was completely normal again. To sum up, I have many other stories from that site. No matter how much I try to rationalize the events, I still can't explain how the sound was suddenly blocked. The go-to for people is like, oh, there was like fog or like low cloud that came in. I know what fog looks like. We get fog there every morning and it's amazing. A low cloud could explain the darkness to an extent, but it doesn't explain the sound. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the read. Let me know if you want more stories about the campsite. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, you have multiple times to that campsite?
This person makes it like their fucking example. One of the comments underneath is, oh my God, I'd love to hear more. And then other people are just like, I'm sorry, did you say that you go here all the time? Like just like stuff like that. And I don't know, it's kind of like I find stuff like that like interesting and fun, but it's just like, why? Are you trying to figure it out? Is this a scientific thing, or just like having the shit scared out of you?
I get the shit scared out of me sometimes when I turn off the light downstairs and I run up the stairs too fast.
Yep. Why are ghosts so bad at communicating? They ghost you.
Oh, that's bad. It'd be better if it was like, why are ghouls so bad at communicating?
Or Why wouldn't the ghost dance at the party?
So it never went.
Because he had nobody to dance with him. It's so bad. I love it.
I'm trying to think. I was thinking about Spooky Spotlight.
Yeah.
Which we just came up with the name. You probably listened to us coming up with it. I think next week I want to do one about a cult.
Oh, I love myself a cult documentary. Not that I think what they're doing is okay, but I cannot fathom being in the mind space to join a cult. So I always try to watch these things to understand how people get to that level.
Yeah. Serial murderers.
Yeah. If you have any suggestions or any threads or anything like that that you would like us to read off, please let us know. Please subscribe, share, do all of the things. We appreciate you so much. Stay as warped and twisted as ever. Peace. Thank you so much for listening to us on YouTube. You can find us on all of the socials: Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook,
Snapchat. But if you're more of a just an audio type person, we're on Spotify Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. I think we're on Pandora, iHeartRadio, and you can also check us out on the RSS feed.
Thank you so much for listening, and feel free to go re-listen to some of the episodes that we have.